So we have the unenviable task of trying to follow Mariah. That was absolutely incredible. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dahna Goldstein. I'm co-founder and managing partner of Halcyon Venture Partners. Halcyon Venture Partners invests in seed stage companies in the same verticals that Halcyon supports: health, climate, and equity tech. And I'm excited to be here leading this discussion on trends in impact investing and opportunities to scale impact along with financial returns. As we've seen the politicization and backlash against ESG, we've also seen really exciting movements of capital in both early stage impact investing and in public equities. And I'm delighted to be joined by this amazing panel to explore a range of intersections of financial and impact returns from the earliest stages through to public markets. First, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we can begin our discussion. So Patrice, over to you.
Hello, I'm Patrice Brickman, and I'm the CEO and founder of Inspire Access, and delighted to be here with you.
And I'm Bridget Weiss, and I'm a partner at Arnold & Porter, a law firm where I represent philanthropists and nonprofits.
I'm Juan Diaz, and I'm the COO of FreeCap Financial.
Great, thank you. Well, we will dive into more of these organizations and everything that you all are seeing. So Patrice, as a leader in impact investing, what shifts do you see happening in the investment landscape that are going to drive more significant social change? And specifically, how are you thinking about individuals and how they're using their wealth and their capital?
Sure. I think there's actually a couple shifts that I think are significant. One that's been happening, one that's coming. The most exciting, well, the one that's coming that we don't talk about very much is that we're on the precipice of the greatest wealth transfer that I will see in my lifetime, for sure. I think that there will be for quite some time, with 50 to 80, Bridget, you can probably speak more sharply to this. I'm guessing it's closer to $80 trillion that are going to go from the baby boomers to my generation and beyond. Why that's important to impact investing and that shift is that a big portion of that money is going to go to women. Studies are predicting that. We've got some figures around that. Studies also show, Planet Patrice says also, that women they have a different view on investing, right? They take a longer view. They care about the implications on the community versus returns. And nothing against white men or men, but there is a difference in our style. So that's important for impact investing. The second shift that's been happening, that again is one, it's more than anecdotal, but it is something that I experience and witness, and that is that every generation beyond me, so I'm 57, I'm a Gen, whatever number I am, Gen Xer. I'm going to call it the young people, but millennials, and I learned this from my kids more than anyone else, but I watch them. They're so much more socially engaged than my generation was. They are intentional about not just how they spend their money, but where they invest it, how it flows. They care about stakeholders. We weren't talking about stakeholders when we were 20 years. I don't think it was a word. I think that's just a word that can't come up, but it's really, I think there's a lot of promise in that. So those are the two shifts I think that are really exciting for impact investing.
I agree, it's exciting, and we'll dig into a little bit more of those trends as we continue through the panel. There's something I'm hoping that you can dive into that's specifically within your work with Inspire Access and thinking specifically about donor advised funds and the opportunities with donor advised funds.
Sure, because that's certainly another trend. Despite the fact that this has been you've been able to do this since 2015. So in 2015, the US adopted the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And they included solving for environment and poverty alleviation, for gender equity, for racial equity. And once we adopted them, the US government decided, you know what, if a for-profit company was solving for one of those 17 goals, you were allowed to use philanthropic capital to invest in it. We just didn't start paying attention to it until more recent years. So now more innovators have jumped in. Well, we're watching this pile of complacent capital grow in this country. We're up to over $200 billion. And people are finally saying, how do we tap into that money? That's the kind of money that could move the needle on the inequity that we have here. So it's exciting. A trend that you can use your philanthropic capital to invest in for-profit impact companies is huge.
We agree that's super exciting, and the alignment with the SDGs makes a ton of sense for all of the impact entrepreneurs in the room. Bridget, over to you. ESG has been very controversial and even political of late. You know, ESG critics are arguing that using environmental, social, and governance issues to inform investment decisions isn't consistent with business objectives and results in lower returns. How are you thinking about ESG, and what are you seeing that's interesting and innovative in impact investing?
Well, I think I'm actually going to shift the question. If I might talk a little bit more about the trends that I'm seeing and really what I'm seeing with my client base. So I work a lot with Silicon Valley philanthropists, with high net worth families that have family offices, typically multiple vehicles. And we're really seeing this very, very big shift. It's been noticeable, I'd say, in the last 3 to 5 years. And what we're really seeing, I think, are 3 things. So the first thing is like doing all of the things. It used to be that everyone would stay in their own lane. And what we're seeing now with philanthropists is that they're looking at, what can I do with my philanthropic capital? How am I using my investments? They're looking also at advocacy, even their political giving, and they're thinking about all these things in a very holistic way. So they're using their foundation investments and what do you call it? Complacent capital. I love that. I love that. I think that's such a great phrase. So thinking about, how do we use our capital in a way that's consistent with our values and with our mission? So that's definitely a big shift. With foundations, sometimes they're making grants to for-profits for charitable programs because they realize that those for-profits aren't alone going to be doing that. That's one way to do it, to incentivize them. Sometimes investment and grants with follow-on IP rights or investments. So if you do fund medical research, for example, and the grantee doesn't do anything with it, you want to be able to reach in there and use the IP. Hybrid investment funds. We're seeing investment funds that are really all the capital is foundation funding, and they're looking at how do we solve problems that commercial actors are not looking to solve, and then really trying to find the best and the brightest companies and founders in those areas. So, for example, I'm working with a client right now in the pediatric cancer space. Who knew? The pediatric cancer survival rates haven't changed since the 90s. That's crazy, right? That's absolutely crazy. So that's certainly one thing that we're seeing, and really adding in as well some of the C4 activity, the political activity, and they're really thinking, out of all of these various tools that I have, what is going to be the highest and best use of my funds, and how can I enact the most change? The second thing that I'm seeing is this integrating impact early on. So it used to be you'd have a philanthropic program, maybe you're successful, you'd add on some sort of commercial vehicle at the end. Oftentimes very hard, not very effective, and you're not getting the ideas out as quickly as you can or you should. So we're seeing nonprofits at the beginning integrating an investment fund, a for-profit arm for whatever their particular activity is. An example here is in the medical research space. I do a lot of medical research work. Some of our medical research organizations are at the beginning, including a hybrid impact investment fund, where the for-profit manager is helping the researchers identify when our project's ready for commercialization, which is something that researchers aren't great at doing, and helping them form companies and spin those out. So not dissimilar from what Halcyon does, but in the medical research space. And it's really innovative. We're seeing some really exciting things come out of that. And certainly, I'd say the third big thing I see is, again, that complacent capital. I'm going to steal that. I love that. I love that so much. And really thinking about how can we make a difference and not sit on the funds that we have. And so it is possible as well that the sustainable development goals are a good thing to be thinking about as well under this is all I'm a lawyer. So MIFA, which is the rules at the state level that govern your investments and how you're in general supposed to diversify your investments. It allows you to have concentrated investments in particular areas if central to your mission. And many foundations have historically not done that. We're seeing that happen more and more, and it's really, really exciting.
And that all sounds incredibly exciting. I also love the notion of, actually, I kind of hate the notion of complacent capital because it should be put to use. But it's a great term. Bridget, I'm curious, what are you seeing in terms of what the drivers are at this point? There's all sorts of innovative stuff happening in terms of really leveraging capital. What's driving that in your experience?
I think definitely some of the shifts that Patrice was mentioning. Something else that I'm seeing, particularly because I work with a lot of Silicon Valley philanthropist types, they don't have a whole lot of respect for the rules. So they want to do something. And then as lawyers, we're trying to figure out how can we do that something in a way that's going to be most effective and balance tax, administrative, and other issues. So I think we're seeing is a healthy disrespect for traditional legal structures. And as well, I think in some cases, some of these philanthropists are willing to trade off tax efficiency or impact in a way that we haven't seen before. And so I think that that's something that I'm certainly, it makes it actually, it's fun as a lawyer because you can be really creative and you can really, I think we're starting to move the needle. These are all things that we've been talking about since I've been practicing law 20 years, and we're really just seeing it now. I feel like we are talking and talking and talking for 10, 15 years, and it's really this past 5 years, it's been the big shift.
I think it's incredibly exciting. And I think one of our challenges as a community of people who care about social impact is to get the word out a little bit more that these are things that are possible for people who want to affect the most change with their capital and have that creative approach to it. Turning a little bit to kind of the public equities market. Juan, this question is for you. FreeCap Financial focuses on creating equitable financial opportunities. How do we think about leveraging data, and how are you thinking about leveraging data to think about how streams of capital are allocated for social impact?
Yeah, so at FreeCap Financial, we're on a mission to be the world leader in social impact investing data. So right now, our first data set makes it possible to invest in public equities that are leaders in fair chance hiring, but also divest from the companies that are still profiting from our broken prison system. And what our data allows people to do is also to take the subjectivity out of the harm being done. So you can help us, starting with now, I'm trying to dismantle the prison industrial complex. Now, data is super important to me. My background is in engineering. And so in engineering, nothing gets done until you know what is going to happen, right? You take a lot of data, do a lot of measurements so that you know what the result is going to be. Obviously, in business, that's not possible. And then it gets especially difficult when you're trying to balance what are going to be the financial returns with what are going to be the impacts? Are there any trade-offs? What's going to happen? And while I don't think data and AI are going to be a magic ball to be able to let us predict the future, I do think that what data is going to bring is trust and transparency, or at least like trust through transparency. And I'm here because of the trust and transparency. I was a fellow at Halcyon for a different venture, which ended up not going anywhere. But because the programs of Halcyon are so good at generating trust and transparency, that's how I met Tanay, who founded FreeCap. And we realized that we had very compatible skills. And 2 years later, here I am. So I want to also bring a second example for that trust and transparency and an impact, which is Costco, one of the companies we rate. So Costco is in a lot of divestment lists because they use prison labor. Now, the reason we know that Costco uses prison labor is because they actually audit their supply chain. So we do not put Costco in our divestment list because we want other companies to audit their supply chains and know what the harm that is being done instead of simply ignoring the problem. Of course, Costco is also setting plans and on a route to stop using prison labor. So I think the essence, right, just trust and transparency so that investors can truly understand the impact, the trade-offs, and invest with their values.
It's fantastic, and really love the work that you're doing. You know, we've been hearing a lot about pushback against ESG, but I think what you're seeing at FreeCap is that there is a lot of market demand for people to be able, as you just said, to align their investments both at the earliest stages and in public equities with their value. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of the market demand and where you see things going?
Yeah, I think, like Patrice mentioned, just the younger generations, millennials, even Gen Z more than millennials, are just more interested in making sure there is impact, making sure that whatever they're investing aligns with their own values. And there's a lot of trade-offs that can happen. And I think something that, and I think I see this more with millennials, is you see a company and you're like, well, this company is really good. So I'll give you another example, right? There is a tobacco company which scores very well in fair chance hiring, but they're a tobacco company. And so I think something that we'll be able to tell and we'll be able to see, and people will be able to generate more this trust to bring more people into the field, is this data. And that's kind of what we're going to see.
That's all very exciting. This is a question for all of you. I'd love to get kind of a quick take here. How can impact investors ensure that their funding supports not only the growth of entrepreneurs, but also addresses some of the systemic issues that may hinder the long-term success, specifically for underrepresented founders?
I think there's a couple ways, and I'm adding this one on, just being here with Juan and hearing from Wimemo earlier, the show. But I think data is on our side. It's sort of, getting to that truth more quickly, and the more we front that, the less the biases that I think do exist in traditional investing and investing altogether. And from the investor side, I think that's going to be a really important trend. Before that, I might have given a different answer. Before today, I might have said something about intentionality, which I still think is important. We've got a lot of catching up to do. In 1988, I couldn't have gotten a corporate loan as a woman. I needed a man to co-sign with me, right? So intentionality is important. And then the data thing, I think, because it's the trust and transparency. And I love coming to Halcyon because I just learned something, I have another tool in my toolkit now, but yeah.
Something that I think a lot about is how do we nurture and support that next generation of talent? I think obviously Halcyon's a great example. In the example that I gave about a medical research organization with a hybrid investment fund, one of the things that we're seeing our clients do is they're supporting through incubators at the nonprofit that talent. So they are providing fellowships for kids. They look like kids to me now, as they come up, and they're looking at how do we get diverse talent so that the researchers in the labs that are going to invent the things that we want to commercialize are, look like all of us, right? Represent all of the communities that we have here. And then throughout the incubator process, they're also looking at that as well, and how do we nurture that talent? Because there are so many great minds, and it's how do those great minds get their product out, get access to capital? And just because they don't, their dad's golf buddy, they don't have a dad's golf buddy or something like that, but how do you connect those great thinkers with the capital? And so these types of incubator programs, I think, are just so wonderful for that. And we're seeing it at scale too. Now it's happening at scale. And this is like multiple of these incubators at major research institutions all across the country. So if you think about the number of researchers impacted, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I recently read about a concept called network orchestration. So it's being very diligent and to make a network based on a specific region or a specific impact field. Because something else that I think I've learned business over engineering is just relationships are everything, right? And if you don't have those relationships, and if the founders in that specific region or field don't have those relationships and those contacts, it's very hard to get traction and very hard to get anywhere. So it's really being very thoughtful about those networks and creating them, which Halcyon is very good at doing. So
to quickly pick up on one thing that Bridget mentioned, one of the things that we've long said at Halcyon is that innovation is universal and opportunity is not. And a lot of what we do at Halcyon, a lot of what all of you in the room are doing is really creating those opportunities so that innovation can thrive and can address these seemingly intractable problems that we're trying to solve, aligned with the SDGs in health and climate and equity tech. And I just want to thank the panel. This has been a really fascinating discussion about both trends, but also it seems like we're maybe on the precipice of something that's going to tip in the direction that we know that we all believe that the future of business is impact driven, that financial returns don't have to come at the expense of social returns and vice versa, but there are great ways to align all of those interests to create great scalable businesses, create great investment opportunities, while also driving the impact that we're all trying to drive. So thank you very much to the panel.